I'm Pam Minick, and welcome to Cowgirl Connections at the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame. And today we're with 1990 Cowgirl Hall of Fame honoree, Shelly Burmeister Mowery. And this is kind of a take two on this. We had a wonderful Cowgirl Connections at the museum just a few weeks ago, and it was a stellar event. And by popular demand, more people, more friends of Shelly's and friends of Cowgirls around the world said, we want to see what we missed. We weren't able to make it to Fort Worth, Texas. So this is kind of a take two. A disclaimer, at the event the other night, there were many stars in attendance. In fact, one we'll talk about soon, a dear friend of Shelly's. So when you're looking on the cowgirl.net website, make sure that you take a look at what Cowgirl Connections are coming up so you won't miss a great event. But we're going to dig right into the Shelly Mowery story. And first of all, 1990 honoree. So that means your love of horses went way back to when you were a kid, but it was kind of an unconventional route into the horse world, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I think you and I both kind of came from that same atmosphere, if there's such a word for that one. I was a city girl. I just wanted a horse. I just fell in love with horses. And I don't know why. But I mean, from, stick horse to even a broomstick, anything. I just was crazy about it from a very young age. And, now I'm going to date ourselves. The TV back then was black and white. And so, what I really wanted was a white horse with black stocking legs. And I'm still looking for that one. But yeah, I don't know how that evolved. There was nobody in my family. I think my great grandfather was a milkman. And so he would have the horse drawn carriage or whatever, delivering milk. But that's as close as I can get to anybody in my family crazy about horses.
You grew up in Iowa, but you shortly thereafter made your move to Texas, which is kind of horse country.
Yeah. So I'm the baby of three daughters of my parents, Sally Mae, Susan Faye, and Shelly Renee. And my mom and dad were high school sweethearts in Des Moines. And my father was in the sheet metal business. So there was kind of a gap in age. My oldest sister, Sally, we were 14 years apart, and Susie and I are 7. And so he had the opportunity to come to Dallas, Fort Worth and build the Braniff terminal and do all the heating and air.
Wow.
And so that's how we got to Texas. And of course, growing up, my dad would always say to me when he'd leave and being a little tomboy following him everywhere, he'd go, I'm going to go see a man about a horse. And I took that literally. And so when we were going to Texas, I said, that's my ticket to ride. And then we ended up staying for a while. And my dad was part of one of the 8 wonders of the world. He did the Houston Astrodome.
Wow.
So about a little more time. So this is the early 70s when I get to Texas. And I was close to a stable, Western Ridge riding stable. And I went and tried to ride everybody's horse, and I tried to barrel a horse and I fell off, all of that. And then I got into hunter jumping and dressage, which I really loved that. But my mother was born with a heart condition. So when I started doing the jumping shows with an 18-hand horse with a lovely lady named Helen Ingmeyer, my dad says, you got to stop because the horse was hesitating the jumps. And you're gonna
give your mom a heart attack.
You're gonna make this go a little faster for your mother. So then I found a green broke horse, and it was in a dry lot with 20 other horses that looked terrible, but she had 4 stocking legs and a flax mane and tail, and she cost $150. And I named her Jewel, and we both learned together. And it was a trial and error. I'd come home bawling, going, she doesn't like me anymore. And then my mother was like, oh, she'll be fine. And so I just, I really just studied that. And I think one of the, I think the best experience for me, and I would always tell younger people, was I got involved with 4-H. And that was, didn't know it at the time, but I look back now and go, I was, and believe it or not, I was very kind of a shy person. I was a little bit,
which is so hard to believe.
Come on now. I mean, I do all this television stuff. It's no big deal, but I was a little bit introverted as far as being around people, and I was just shy because I was the only child, so to speak, at my,
because you're the difference in
age, and so, and then, and I just enjoyed being able to learn from other people. And that's really carried on for me today is is all of that. So anyway, we ended up there and then eventually moved back to Iowa. I graduated from high school and I did all this other stuff that I'm sure you're going to probably bring up, but did the pageant things and all of that. And then I couldn't get back to Texas quick enough. And I love Iowa, but they don't have a lot of the things that I wanted to be a part of, which was rodeo and especially horses, you know.
Well, let's talk about pageants because you were very strong in the Miss Rodeo America pageant, and that even led to more things in your career. But talk about first of all, take us through your pageant life, and then tell me what that taught you that has helped you through the rest of your life.
Well, I think, you know, I ran for Miss Rodeo Iowa not once, but 3 times. So that should have deterred anybody, you know, except me, obviously. And then the 3rd round, I had already moved to Texas and really
But you can run for your state if you declare that state, no matter where you live.
Right. Yeah. And of course, you know, one of our best friends, Debbie Garrison, we kind of switched batons because she ended up becoming Miss Rodeo America like the next following year. So that, yeah, I can tell you that you have to sell a sponsorship on your Miss Rodeo America pages, right, for their program. And all of my sponsors were Lisa Motor Lines,
Texas
Brumbaugh Furniture,
for
because I was a truck dispatcher for Lisa Motor Lines. So I'm hitting all of Stockyards down there back in the day. And so everything was Texas. And so, you know, I didn't have, and of course I had to borrow. I think Panhandle Slim was gracious to let me get some clothes. I mean, I was struggling and then my dad's already half PO'd at me about what did you go to Texas for and all the above. So I went to the Miss Rodeo America pageant. I will tell you, and your husband is also a little bit to thank and to blame. He let me go out to the ranch in Saginaw, and I got on every horse that he would allow me to get on, except his bucking horses. I'm not so sure I didn't get on one of those, but Billy was really gracious. And the McLaughlins, a lot of people. I knew I could ride well, and you know my stuff was play days and pleasure and pole bending. I mean, this is different.
And you're riding in the competition in those pageants. You're riding a horse you've never been on before. So to be tested by that many different horses really was an advantage for you.
But yeah. I knew that I probably wasn't going to excel much in my speech or any of that stuff. My goal is that I wanted to be the best horseman that I could be.
And you're cute.
Well, thank you. You know, now you're going to make me, I'm not going to say anything. That was my goal though, was to be able to not go in there and, you know, it didn't matter if I was representing Iowa or not. And that was the year they actually filmed. They had a national, it was nationally televised. So they wanted every state queen to be there. And that was different because there were some gals that did not even know how to ride. And I felt bad for them. Anyway, so I did really well in the horsemanship. I won a couple of the go rounds. And back then that was 60% of Miss Rodeo America as far as in the competition. No, it was 40%. I don't remember, but it was a larger percentage than, you know, appearance, personality, and all of that. And so I really did well. And I was really excited because I made the newspaper for the first time in my life in Iowa. And they were all like, woohoo. And I became first runner at Miss Rodeo America,
which is an achievement.
Thank you. And it was, I don't know if I was even 20 yet. Almabeth Carroll from Colorado already had her master's. So you could tell, I mean, it wasn't real even playing field, but I was just overjoyed and really happy that I was able to accomplish that.
What do you think you learned most about pageant life?
You're either made out. I mean, you really are for it or you're not for it at all. It really wasn't, honestly, and I'm not trying to downgrade. It was not really my cup of tea. I'm actually grateful that I didn't really become Miss Rodeo America because I know so much more about that now. And I think I'm not telling anybody not to do it. I think it's a great organization. As you know, I just judged it. And it's been a long time since I've attended. I think you can, you know, anything with regards to pageants or trying to pursue to get into other places. If you work at it hard enough, I think you will succeed. But you know, it always helps if you're really excited about it too. I wasn't one that was just, I look back now, Pam, and I go, I think there was other things I wanted to do. and as it turned out, it was almost like becoming Miss Rodeo America for me when I landed a job about a year later.
And let's talk about that. So you were the very first sponsor representative in pro rodeo that I'm aware of. Tell the story because it's such a great story about how you became Miss Coors.
Well, so I was holding 3 jobs, and I had a full ride scholarship from the Miss Rodeo America pageant, and wasn't sure really what I wanted to do, and I just wanted to still be part of rodeo, just wasn't able to figure that out. And I received a phone call from the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, Bob Edson, and David Allen. There was several of those guys that said, hey, Coors is looking at becoming maybe a national sponsor. And so back in the 80s, you already had like Winston, Justin, help me out, Wrangler. There were 5 or 6, and they would have some of the on Frontier Airlines. So, the Cindy Dodge Alexander had Winston, and Nancy Stockdale Servey had Frontier. And so these gals would go throughout the United States representing those companies. And I thought, well, that sounds like that would be fun. So I was able to get in an interview in Golden, Colorado, in front of a long table with Pete Coors, Jeff Coors, Rob Klugman, some heavyweights.
And your dad wasn't so excited about this
opportunity, my dad was pissed. He got a full ride scholarship, and you're not going to hire you and
to go to work for a beer company.
You got to remember, my dad was, back in the day, he was one of those, the wife stays at home and raises the kid, and women, there's not a place for that. And he made that clear. And so I said, well, I got to try, all you can do is try, Dad. And he didn't talk to me for several weeks. So I had the one interview. They weren't sure. They thought they were going to do it, but they weren't sure. They said, why don't you tell us what you think we should do? We need to have some kind of a format or, a program for professional rodeo. So I came up with, not necessarily the verbiage of Coors Shootout. That came in the meeting, but the idea of being able to put more money in the cowboy and cowgirls' pockets, a little extra incentive, and especially a little bit of a rainbow at the end of the rodeo year. And they loved it. And so I was hired and was with him for 10 years. I lived out of a suitcase with a little Yorkie named LaRue, rode and got on a lot of horses. I had a black book, just like the bull riders and the bronc riders, because there were some rodeos and horses that you just didn't want to push. You didn't want to do too much with them, if you're carrying a flag or whatever. So yeah, I just had all the cheat sheets and everything, and enjoyed working with the comedians. And I think a lot of people would look at what I did. If you would go to a rodeo, I looked like a billboard. I had a Coors outfit on, Coors cap, Coors flag, just on a total flaming billboard. And that was my free time, because most of the time is either traveling or I was dealing with rodeo committees and making sure that our signage was right and dealing with Coors.
It was more than just a girl around.
It was a corporate. Mm-hmm. It was very much corporate for me. There's a lot of cutting down trees, paperwork, and making sure that an annual $1 million sponsor was getting their money's worth. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. And so, yeah, that was a 10-year ride.
And that led you, though, because the contacts there led you into television broadcasting.
It did.
And for a girl that professed to be shy, you did quite well.
I always say that I've been lucky to be in the right place at the right time, and just go in just guns loaded kind of thing. You don't know until you try it. And a gentleman, as you and I both have worked for many years, was John Van Gardner with Running J Productions. And again, here I am. I'm all shapped up, and I'm behind the chutes at the National Finals Rodeo in Oklahoma City. And he didn't tell me the truth, because we both know John. He'd fudge a little bit, and it's like this, you wait the table and we'll make sure that you own the restaurant before the night's over. And he just said, I need somebody. And I think the gal really just didn't show up. So he said, have you ever done that? And I said, well, as Miss Coors, I'd been doing a lot of radio morning talk shows and interviews. So I felt kind of okay with the camera. But the next thing you know, he puts me right in it, and I'm doing the play-by-play. It's horrible. Don't ever watch it, please. I think you can Google it. And my first interview was with Martha Jessie.
Oh, wow.
She'd won the world And so that was, and then I think I did three NFRs and I went back to back with that, but that's kind of where it started. And it wasn't like I wanted to keep doing that, but I started getting the phone calls. And you and I mean, before I started, it was you, only you. And so I already was like, I want to be Pam. I'd like to be Pam Minick. That would be cool. Only thing I found out, it doesn't pay.
Right.
Okay. It really doesn't. It does now because of her making, those empowering. If you want me, you gotta take care of somebody. And you've opened a lot of doors, not only for me, but for a lot of other people. And just backing up on the course thing, that I guess maybe why I was inducted into the Hall of Fame or recognized is that I made money equal for the women barrel racing. And I only knew that by way of being Miss Coors Rodeo, because I had no idea that some of these small rodeos, big rodeos, were not paying equal money. And it was an easy sell for me because I just said, hey, I think their trucks cost the same and their horses usually are a little more. And
they got the most exposure because they had the Coors can in the arena for barrel racing.
Well, yeah. Don't think I didn't think about that ammo, but it was just like either you make it equal or we're not coming back. And there was some that took a couple years and some that didn't take long at all. And it didn't hurt because I had not only the contestants, but especially the barrel racers going, thank you. Because that little bit
20,
helps.
30 years later, it made a difference. Yeah.
I think it did. Yeah. But at the time I didn't think about that. I was just being a renegade, little rebel came out of me and you can't do that to women. And, so that helped a lot. I'm very proud of that one, but I had no idea. I did not see that coming.
So, launching on from your rodeo broadcasting, you got involved in the cutting horse industry, and we haven't even talked about your success there, but it launched you into that part of broadcasting as well, if we're going to keep this in broadcasting boxes. But you've done an amazing job for 2 decades with the National Cutting Horse Association as a broadcaster.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, it always helps when you're doing a play-by-play or broadcasting and you know what you're talking about. You know that as well as I do. I mean, there's a lot of them that can fake it and kind of lead you in that direction. And I'm not talking about rodeo. I'm talking in sports in general.
Exactly.
They're professionals and they know what to say and how to say it.
But if they haven't lived it.
And the person at home's going, okay. But when you have that advantage of actually performing and cutting competition and watching and knowing the rules and regulations, and I'm lucky enough to be married to a trainer and an expert judge. So it's just, you eat and breathe that, you have better knowledge. And so I think the interviews will go better and the questions go better. And
the play-by-play
goes better. You're not stumping anything. And so I did actually almost 30 years back to back for the major age events, the Futurity, the Super 6 and the Derby, which for cutting, that is like the Super Bowl. It's the triple crown of all of that. And, we were, gosh, man, I was with so many different networks. It was Fox, and then it was NBC and CBS, and we had ESPN, and we had ESPN2. I mean, all of them. And that was sometimes a challenge because you get a director and a producer and they didn't know what the hell they were looking at.
So you're like, follow me.
Like, hey, there's replay here. They have not crowned this guy yet. So I don't think you want to give me my check and tell me I can go back to Weatherford. We got to wait a little bit. And it actually happened. That's a true story. So, and so I enjoyed that. And of course I did, we switched batons a couple times with Mesquite Championship Rodeo, which is dated, but it was the most recognized rodeo in the world. And thanks to the Rafter G. And so I was with TNN and then I left and you went TNN and then I came back and I was with Fox, for 10 years until they closed the door. And so, I gotta say though, I've always, you probably, I hope you weren't even thinking about asking me this, but I've always enjoyed the rodeo people a little more than I have the other equine events. I think
I don't
know why.
The stories there are so deep with a passion, and not to say that any of the other equine sports don't have passions, but in rodeo, there is no trainer. There is no, there is no owner. It's you. Yeah. And I think that for me, that's really the thing that completely separates it. I mean, you're an independent contractor, period. End of story.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your cutting, because to go from Jewel, your play day 4-H horse, to the pinnacle of the equine industry with the cutting horses that you've had, this is an astounding figure. 165 registered American quarter horses have come from her breeding program. How did you get involved in cutting? Because it's like I bypassed that part of your life, and then all of a sudden you show up in the cutting arena in the winner's circle.
Well, honestly, it was not planned. And it was a very famous cowgirl who also graces this museum. Her name was Fern Sawyer. And we were working the Albuquerque State Fair rodeo, which was a big rodeo. And I had gotten acquainted with Fern on and off for many years during attending and working in Albuquerque. And you never wanted to upstage her. And she carried a pink rope and she smoked a purple cigarette. And I can go on and on. But just
if you come to the museum, you'll see many of her rhinestone outfits on display here. And she's really probably one of the foundations of the National Cowgirl Museum, because her place in New Mexico was not that far from where the museum was founded in Hereford, Texas.
Exactly. And to go even further back, Fern Sawyer was one of the founders for the National Cutting Horse Association.
Right.
And you can make out who they are in the pictures, like 7 guys and 2 gals. And I don't know that they've ever figured out who the other gal is, but it's definitely Fern Sawyer.
But anyway, carry on.
So
that is a special.
So we're at Albuquerque, and now it was one of those where we goes, watch her, because she either likes you or she don't like you at all. And so I always rode behind, and I let her push out the steer or the calf, and then she'd look at me and Chris, and the next thing she goes, let's go to the bar and have something in between and just, I didn't drink, and so she was just I couldn't keep up, but I found her amazing. So we're just getting done with the perf that night, and she says, hey, meet me at 8:00 over here in this parking lot, or better yet, we'll just go have breakfast, but we're going to go over to the fairgrounds, and I entered you in the cutting. I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, no, I entered you in the ladies' cutting. And she goes, you'll be fine. Geez, okay. So I'm with like no practice, and I get on like a very famous horse of Jimmy Randall's that has like smooth Hermans, and now I know all that bloodline, but back then it's like she got me way too much horse. Way too much. And then she tries to tell me not to hang on to the horn, which that's not, they used to do that, but they don't do that now, because the horses are a little more aggressive, a little more trained. And that was my first experience. I ended up second. Brenda Michael she won first. And and that was a bug. And then I was like, ooh, I gotta have some more of that. I'd like that, because I'd already kind of tried everything.
I think most people say that when they ride a cutting horses, it's addictive.
Yeah, and I chewed her out after that, years later, because she cost me a lot of money. When you get into that type of sport, I probably shouldn't cuss, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so I went crazy over that, and then I let it go for a while because with my job and busy and all the above, and then my next ride was with a gentleman, famous saddle maker, Price McLaughlin, and I went out to Saginaw, and he put me on another really big time horse, and he let me hang on to the horn. And it was just very addictive. And then it just went from there. I mean, that's all I wanted. That is all I wanted to do.
And then you found,
and I made you do it too.
Yes, you did. Right? We have lots of pictures of that.
And she was smart and said, I'm not going to get in this too heavy.
This is the best way to do it. She owns the horse. I just jump on. So, but
it's like being a grandparent. Here's your baby back.
Right. But you found a horse that changed your life.
I did. And so another just quick story, Fern Sawyer again. I was looking for a nice mare, and who is now my brother-in-law, Mike, said we have one in Weatherford. So I flew to Weatherford and I tried her, and Fern was with me, and Chris, same thing. Don't hang on to that horn. Well, this mare is just like, she'd blow you from here to there. It's not possible to jockey that good. I'm not that good of a rider. And her name was Some Kind of Playgirl. And so I had her and another horse that I was looking at, and I just kind of kept coming back to her. She was gray. She was 5 years old. And
it gives me goosebumps when you tell the story, because that horse, I remember watching you and her in your career, and it just, what a phenomenal athlete.
Thank you. She really taught me more than then I realized, and when I finally started letting her pick her own cattle and do her own thing, I really started winning. I mean, I knocked it out one year with all major events, but we struggled through the herd working a lot because I was, everybody's telling you, you get the mott. And she's like, no, I don't want the mott. I want the Hereford over here. And when I finally just said, man, that's how smart she was. So and a lot of people always ask, so that she's a Freckles Playboy, which is a very famous bloodline. And then on the bottom, Doc Lady goes back to the own daughter of Doc Bar, which had a lot of speed. And that's where you get a lot of the grays and all of that. So yeah, her and I was really lucky to have her, for sure. Cause I was looking at another horse that didn't vet check, and she ended up also being a very famous producer. And my friend Gail Holmes ended up owning her. So, there you go.
But she became kind of the foundation of your breeding program, which still exists today, 165 horses later.
Well, she didn't do all of those, but she did quite a few. Again,
because that's an addiction to have that many babies and it's crazy. It's a crazy roll the dice business too, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think anytime you get in full throttle on any type of business with the stock market or whatever it is, you need to know, you need to be prepared to hold or sell. And those can be iffy, touchy. And you have success and then you don't. So you have to just write it out. I bred her, I'd had Sawyer, so I bred her to Smart Little Lena, which was a very famous stallion, back to Doc Alina's. And these are really, I'm giving you all the foundations of, what was then and that still is now, but they're on the third line of the papers. And so I bred her and let her carry, which back then that's what you still were doing. Mm-hmm. Now we don't do that. And so she had a preemie. I had just lost Fern Sawyer the year before. And she actually passed on a cutting horse, Enchilada, which belonged to Buster Welch. Mm-hmm. So she went out just the way she wanted to, right? And so it was awkward because this mare was, when the baby came out at 2 weeks early, can be very risky. When they're preemies like that, they really usually don't make it. And there she was. And I wasn't living on the ranch. I was living in town, and I went, oh my God, what are we doing?
I got to sleep with this baby.
No. And so I got her to Dr. Baker, and long story short, I realized then and at the time that it was on Fern's birthday. Wow. Kid you not. And I went, okay, this is a moment. So I said, well, I'm going to call her Fern, and I'm going to name her Some Kind of Memories because of Some Kind of Playgirl. Mm-hmm. Now, here I go here.
Yeah.
Watch it. And so, she wasn't real friendly. She was just stout, and she made it. I mean, she was growing, and I didn't even send her to a 2-year-old trainer until like July, which is not normal. You send them way earlier. And Randy Cherry, he just was like, Shelly, I've had to tie her to a donkey. I mean, she just won't.
Very obstinate.
Oh, I thought, well, that's Fern all the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, so fast forward, she trained. I sold her to Carl Schranz, who was a very famous brain surgeon who actually died from a brain tumor. Mm. And she went on to the futurity with my brother-in-law, and I gave him a picture of Fern. Fern had, I don't know how many blue Cadillacs, but she's always had her foot up on the bumper of a Cadillac, and I said, stick that in your back pocket. Well, I'm doing the television. Oh, she marks the highest score, and she ends up winning the Open Futurity Finals. God. And I have to interview my brother-in-law and look at that little mare with all the freckles on her face. That was a hard interview. I mean, I got through
emotional.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got back to the trailer, and I got makeup running down my face. Nobody in the crew said, oh, you might want to, No, it was obvious that, there was a connection there. And then she went on, and Some Kind of Memories went on to be a huge producer, millions and millions of dollars. And she's just passed. So yeah, just quit tearing up. You got this eyes watered, and now here I go. But that was, I don't, what's the chances?
Yeah, that was crazy. But even today, so that was a decade or more ago, a couple decades ago. But even today, you're still breeding great horses.
Thank you. Now they're she's the grand dame of a lot of them. And it's been fun to watch because you can say what you want. You still see a lot of characteristics of Playgirl in these babies. And she had a big eye spread. She almost kind of had a little bit of an Arabian look to her, but she really had that eye spread. And of course, our dear friend, Binion, he would look at her and go, "That's a smart horse." He said, "No, I like where that cowlick is."
Mm-hmm.
And he'd go back and he'd grab her tailbone, see how strong that was. I mean, this is old stuff,
Old school horsemanship.
But I'm telling you, a lot of it's true. And so I still do it. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. Yeah. But you can have a lot of horses in your life like you can have a lot of friends. But then when you get down to the nitty gritty, you really narrow it out. And there's just a few really great
special ones.
Yeah.
Let's talk about family. You briefly mentioned Sawyer. And of course, she was named for your dear friend, Fern Sawyer, a great mentor of yours, and your husband, Rick. And that's been, I guess, a match made in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, we're 26 years, last thing I want to do is marry a trainer. I mean, that was not on my mind. And then now my daughter is dating a trainer. And so I can't tell her not to date the trainer. So that doesn't work. But Rick's just, I mean, he's my best friend. And Sawyer is completed me. She truly changed my life. I was a single mom for 5 years. And so that's not an easy task. And then naming her after Fern Sawyer and Sawyer, that rubbed off a little bit. I think I probably overtrained her to be independent because I was a working mom. And so she's now a lobbyist in Austin with Hanson Scarborough and showing cutting horses. And
she's how old now?
32.
Gosh, time
Can you
flies.
believe it?
Yeah. She is beautiful. And she is an amazing horsewoman as well. Talk a little bit about some of her accomplishments. In fact, the night that we did this original Cowgirl Connections with the big audience, she had just come from winning 3 classes at the big cutting here.
Yeah, she won like $30-some thousand that day. And I went, there's people who don't make that in a year. She's, or she was in my belly when I was riding. So she learned early. She's been able to ride well enough that she can pick it up and let it go for a while. We had a really nice mare that went back to Playgirl and the mare colicked and died, and she stepped off and she didn't get back on, and I wasn't going to force that because, it's like Jewel. She lived to 36 and I still wanted her to live longer, so she's just really kind of started back up. She loves cutting and she reads. The cutting thing is kind of like golf. It's very mental. So you got to really be able to read cattle. You got to know cattle, and you got to be able to follow and let, without the judges noticing that you're giving visible cues, which you're not to do. And there's a lot that goes into it, but there's nothing like it. So she's got it. I told her, I said, get it now while you can, because hope you have kids and all of that. And that'll slow things down a little bit, but and as well as I do, I always tell people, and it was like, I'm in my 4th quarter, really, if I look at it. I mean, there's only so many birthdays and Christmases and Halloween's left. If you look at it.
Which is her birthday, Halloween.
Okay, lighten up now and start talking. Anyway, so I wanted to say something about the Hereford thing. Were you going to go there at all?
No, go ahead.
Because I think we touched on this, and I had so many people approach me because it was a sellout at this deal. I was just shocked to see that many people in the room, and a lot of good friends, and a lot of people have never been here before. And it's so important because I think now they've become members, which I would tell all of you to
become
do that.
A member.
Absolutely, it's worth it. And you get free parking. There's all kinds of stuff you get. So when I was inducted in Hereford, I don't believe there's very many of us still here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Norma Sanders and Johnny Jonkowski and Dixie Mosley,
Jimmy Monroe, I think
Jimmy maybe. And of all places, Hereford, Texas, if you've ever been through there, it doesn't smell great, but
smells like cows, and people say that smells like money.
They have a lot of cattle there. It was founded in 1975 by Margaret Formby, and it was, I think the library donated. And so it was kind of looked like a house. They had the basement, and that's where they kept all their research and all the above. And I just think it's a beautiful story because I was a little bit of a small part of that, to watch her make a decision to say, I need to let it go. Mm-hmm. It's time to let it fly. And I was like,
And
wow.
then it moved to Texas.
Wow. Of course, I
Fort
hadn't
Worth,
had kids yet. And I was like, how do you let that? Oh, that's hard. Really hard. And very impressive lady and very distinguished. I mean, she walked in the room. She's, well, her and Fern Sawyer were really tight. So you could imagine the wardrobes and all of the lingo. And Margaret just said, just sit down with a few of us and said, and I'm just like, well, every city wanted this. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, it's the only museum in the world that recognizes women only, past, present, and future. Right. And so Fort Worth was entertaining this, and I was like, "Oh God, I love Fort Worth." So I kind of grew up here. And it was interesting how she maneuvered, and the people in Fort Worth that wanted it so badly, and I just we were down in the stockyards. We were going to think Mule Barn D, which she goes, "No, there's too many bars." I mean, she did a lot of her homework, and and really kind of like Fern for me was a mentor of watching somebody pull together such a fabulous idea in Hereford, Texas, and here she is. I mean, she let it go, and it's beautiful. And I mean, I don't think and
it's in the right place now.
I think it is in the right place. I just
the stories. I mean, to tell the stories of these amazing cowgirls. Yours is just one of more than almost 200, I think. And so Fort Worth is a great place for this.
I think Fort Worth is. I mean, and I'm talking. You had some big Kansas City, Phoenix. I mean, some really major cities. Could they have done what Fort Worth has done? I don't think so, because there's so much history, as you and I both know.
People, cowboys and culture.
Just it just goes so far back, and it goes clear to Parker County, from all the above. So it's, and of course she's no longer with us, but I think she got to see it when it first opened. So I know she was proud of that. But that again, that's a hard let go. And I just always have to be grateful. We all should be, that Margaret Formby had that tenacity and cowgirl way, because she wasn't a cowgirl, but she was, an English major and all the above. And she had a vision, and I'm really glad she did.
So at our event, a special friend of yours was here, and you've had a relationship with Tanya Tucker for more than 3 decades. But to talk about, it's almost like sisters. You guys are so close, and you pick up where you left off. And a lot of people look at Tanya as the big star, and for you, Tanya's just most importantly a dear friend. Talk a little bit about that friendship, and I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to see this, because they were like two married people. Just
we both just had. Mine was previous, but she just had hip surgery. So I think you made the comment, they're joined at the hip, literally. And so she brings me this rhinestone, wild looking cane that she uses on stage. There's a lot of bling bling there, and in fact, I haven't given that back. I don't know that I will, but she, we've known each other.
How did your friendship evolve?
I think we were both underneath the announcer stand at the National Finals Rodeo, and she was watching her boyfriend, then Bobby Brown, ride broncs. And then it just kind of went from there. And then I didn't see her. And then I couldn't get rid of her. She says the same about me, but we've, and then Rick, my husband, they both also, Tanya's first boyfriend love was my brother-in-law, Mike. And then Rick and her both celebrate 10-10-58, and they argue about who's 30 minutes apart. And so that they've been friends forever. I mean, I couldn't get around it. There's no way I could not be her friend. But we are really close. I mean, there's times where we go without talking. You and I included. I mean, or even Debbie Garrison. I mean, we know if you need
pick
us,
up where you left off.
We're there. Yeah, it never changes. She has a lot of her horses with us, and she's a cowgirl. Talk about be a great spokesperson for all of it. I mean,
the equine industry.
She's
a real rider. She doesn't just get.
Oh no, she shows cutting horses. Yeah. I mean, she's beat my times, and I'd like to brag that's a little hard to do. But her and I are always giving that back. So she's done really well, and she doesn't get to practice much, so I try to throw her on anything that'll mess her up, and she's hard to mess up. But she's just, I think the highlight for me was watching her be inducted into Country Music Hall of Fame, because she's our age and really probably should have already been in there. And that was amazing. She rode a Percheron to the event, on Broadway. How many cowgirls do that? That's pretty risky.
Mm-hmm.
That could be dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's 18 hands tall and he's gorgeous, and she didn't have problems, and she'd ride him in the bars. She didn't care. Yeah, and of course we've watched her kids. I mean, we've been part of her children's life, Hayden and Presley and Layla, and she's been very much a part of our kids' lives. And yeah, she surprised me because she told me, because her hip was bothering her, that she wasn't going to probably make it. And I said, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. I can get through it. And then she showed up, and always, outdressed.
And then she's saying, "You're upstaging me. It's my night."
Well, then she starts singing. Oh, everybody, you know what? I've just had so much, I'm sure you as well, and probably the museum, a lot of response. A lot of people was like, if I'd known Tanya Tucker was going to be, and then right across the street, she said, well, now let's go, because we're going to go see Janet Jackson. I said, I am not going to go to Janet Jackson's concert. I mean, again, it's the hip thing. I'm ready to go home. But yeah, she's something else. And then she bought half the store out. And if you have not been here, they got a great store. And she went crazy in that store. There's boxes still at my house. I don't know what else she bought. But the nice thing is we both wear the same size. So,
well, we're going to wrap this up, but I want to encourage you to all check out cowgirl.net so you can see what's coming up next on Cowgirl Connections. Any final thoughts on this museum and you and your future and what the future holds?
Oh, wow.
What's next for Shelly?
Like I told you earlier, I'm on that fourth quarter. I feel, I feel very lucky and blessed. I am not on any medicine. And so when we start talking about in my age bracket, that's kind of rare. Mm-hmm. Rick and I have slowed down in the horse stuff. And I just, I think really I love to cook, and I can, and I do all that kind of stuff now. And I've just kind of look at things differently. So I'm just really have been blessed to be on the road that I've been down. And like the wizard always said, you still saddle your own horse and cinch it up. So I don't see my life being anything different than what it's been for 66 years.
Cowgirl Hall of Fame honoree from 1990, just a few years ago, Shelly Burmeister Mowery, the best.